What's going on, guys? Good morning. This is a very special podcast, and this is the essence of what One Life is. So, without further ado, hi, guys. My name is Donnie Rouse, and you are listening to the podcast One Life. More life in your years. What is the secret to living a longer life? Right? I think people have been in search of this fountain of youth to extend more life or to get more life. But why is it that you want more life? What is it that you hope to gain as a result of having more years? You could look at it, some people say it's not how long you live, it's how much life is in those years. But what if the key to living a longer life was having those goals to live life with enthusiasm, having things to pull you forward? What if it was the demand of life that required and gave you more energy to move forward, live longer, and to live a more happy, fulfilling life? Something to think about. And this is really the essence of what One Life is, this podcast, as well as a course I'm going to be creating and releasing this coming September. It's about creating a vision for your life that's so passionate that it pulls you forward. It gives you a reason to live, a reason to find these reserves of energy that were somehow missing before. But before we can start to create that, you must first understand, so what are the pitfalls? What are the things that prevent us from doing that? I had the experience of having some of those literally in the last few weeks. And uncovering these stones, these beliefs that were actually holding me back. And I'll give you a few questions, and this is just something I want you to think about as I go through this podcast. And they are, on a scale from 1 to 10, how passionate do you feel about life, about your goals? Said differently, how much enthusiasm do you have about life? Next is, how old are you and what do you believe about the potential of your age? To give you an example of this, say you're 40 years old, I'm 41. Well, by 12-month standards, I'm 41. What is your belief system around your age or around say that middle age and what that means for your potential going forward? Next is, how is this affecting your outlook on life and what you're striving for? What if you were 10 years younger? How would that change your psychology? What effect would that have on how you lived your life? And then lastly, what goals would you strive for? So I had commented on a book I've been reading. I'm reading a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. And it's really about the passion for life and developing this passion of vision and how that affects your life in every single day. One of the chapters in the book, he was saying, well, think about how you measure your years. Here we measure, 365 days, 1 year. That is how we typically will measure our life. But is that the right unit of measure for it? What if new science came out and said, you know what? We were wrong this entire time. It's actually 15 months per year. So if you're 41, you're actually 31, 10 years younger. How would that affect your psychology? When I read this passage in this book, I thought about that. I was like, man, that makes sense, right? Because it's not how old you are in age, it's how old you are biologically. I go to the gym nearly every single day. And there's this psychology. When I speak with people, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling achy, but what do you expect? This is the age. This is what happens. And I would often say, no, that is not exactly what happens. I'm going to stay young. But if I'm truthful with myself, I would say, while I was really exerting more physical, I was starting to fall into that habit of that false mindset. When I read this passage in this book, I started to think about that. I was like, well, Isn't that true? Like, well, what if, like, what is it that says this is how old you are? Isn't it really the biology? Doesn't have nothing to do with how many months or years you spend on this earth, but how you feel physically and emotionally. 100%. 100%. Another was the belief. I mean, I'd read this a while ago. They said that, like, maybe it's like men, but it was like you peak in your, I don't know if it was your creativity or your potential at 35 years old. I'd heard that, and that was something that stuck in my mind. I was like, oh man, 35, I'm 41 now. I missed my peak. Oh, well, it's downhill from here. That was the belief I had. Reading this book, he actually highlighted this belief. I can't even remember where the hell I heard this bullshit. And he said, well, while that was the old belief, what they're finding out is that the potential actually goes from 35 all the way past 70. And I was like, wow, I mean, that's pretty freaking amazing. And it stirred up a little bit of emotion inside. It made me like a little bit more enthusiasm. Like, well, all right, well, what else is possible now? Right? Because if you have the belief that your life is almost over or life is just beginning, you're going to respond completely different. Also in this, he says, it is the demands that you place on life. When I say the demands, I'm meeting the goals you have. Right? If you have the goals to travel every single country in the world or maybe hit 14 peaks or whatever, like the 7 summits are. Having that goal is going to make you focus on certain things, certain diets, certain exercise patterns versus not having the goal. So the key to living longer is developing a passion and enthusiasm for life. I just booked a trip to Portugal. I'm going to be going at the end of this month. And it was because I was looking at flights and, I had some credits stored from my American Express card. Normally, when I look at flights from my American Express card, the rates are shit. It's like, all right, I could get it on Google for $800, or I could go through my American Express and they charge me like $875. Like they would normally bump up the price of the ticket. On this occurrence, I said, let me just check my American Express. I know I have like 40,000 points I haven't used. Let me see what I can get. I went on there, and to my surprise, the flight was actually cheaper than it was on all these other sites. Instead of being in the $800 range, it was like $700. By the time I applied my points, I ended up paying something along the lines of like $190 for my ticket. In the checkout, I was sitting there looking at it. I'm like, oh God, do I book it? Do I not book it? Do I book it? Do I not book it? And all of these thoughts are coming through my mind. I'm like, well, is it responsible for me to book it? I'm like, oh my, yeah, I literally just came back from Ireland for my birthday. That was almost like 2 months ago. Is that responsible? Should I be booking another trip? Only 2 months later. My goal was every 3 months to book a trip, but I still have to wait a month. And I was going back and forth. And then I thought to myself, well, this is stupid. Like, who am I answering to? I'm thinking about what other people were going to say. But I remember something that Lori from the Westport Farmers Market, I'll give you a shout out, Lori. She said, life is too short for short trips. I'm sorry. Yeah, life is too short for short trips. Thinking about that, I was like, well, what is it that really ignites me? What is it that makes me feel alive? And it really is the experiences of doing travel. And then it was this deserving factor. I was like, well, do I deserve to do this? Then I was like, well, that's stupid, right? This year, I've actually done a lot just in the first quarter of this year. And I was getting to the point where I was like, I just need a mental break. I need to take a step away. Normally by this time, I would have traveled for a month because I'd take a month off and I would go 4 weeks somewhere, Asia or somewhere. So I also justified it, like, well, you know what? I was in Ireland for 12 days and I'm booking another 12 days here. So technically, I'm still not booking as much time. But I was trying to justify when I didn't need justification. This is one of the things that makes me feel alive. If you're looking at this, if you're watching me on video right now as I'm streaming this, you can see the expression on my face and how it makes me feel. And there is no explanation needed for that. Right? Because that is the life force. The things that make you feel alive, the things that pull you forward are those things that you should be putting your time and energy towards. So let's get back to it. Let's go back to those questions I asked you. How old are you? And what do you tell yourself about the age? How is that affecting your psychology? Like, what do you think is the possible after that? How does it affect what you're striving towards? Remember, when we think that we are in the beginning or we think at the end are two different psychologies. Right? If we think that life is just beginning, we're going to bring more passion, more excitement to it. If we think that things are coming to an end, things are dying down, we are going to get lethargic. We're not going to feel much energy. That we're going to lose that passion, that enthusiasm. What if you were 10 years younger? What if you were 20 years younger? How would that affect how you look at life? I'll tell you what, when I was doing that exercise, when I said like, oh, if I measure my years in 15 months, wow, that would mean I'm 10 years younger. And literally in an instant, I started to think younger. So what is the psychology? What if you were 10 years younger? What if you were 20? What goals would you have? What goals would you set? Right? Maybe there was a time where I wanted to live in Rome, Italy, and that's still a goal. But every time, like every few years, I would reflect back on this desire. And I'd be like, oh, no, it's too late. Then a few years later, I'd be like, oh, man, I should have done it 3 years ago. Oh, it's too late. And I noticed that I kept inching I kept inching forward and forward and being like, oh, well, if I had done it 3 years before. Oh, if only I had done it 3 years before. So it was happening every 3 years. So saying, well, what would you do if you had 10 years, if you went back 10 years? It's a good way of opening your mind to say, well, what goals would I do? What would I try to achieve? What would I strive for? What would make me feel passionate? Because there's no reason that you cannot do those things right now. Again, what goals would you strive for? And if you're listening to this, I encourage you to take one of those goals. Take a small little breadcrumb. Take a small step towards one of those things. After you take the step, I want you to send me a message via my website, DonnieRouse.com, and tell me just what feelings come up as a result of taking that action. Because I know with 100% certainty that by taking that small action towards this goal that you didn't think was possible, but because you're 10 years younger now, you're going to feel this passion, this enthusiasm, this drive. Again, is it all about life is emotion? It's all about emotion. And the goal of this podcast, the goal of everything that I'm going to create is to connect you with that passion, is to make you feel the enthusiasm of life. It's funny, I sometimes equate myself to Holden from The Catcher in the Rye. I look at life and I'm like, well, no, this is not the way it's supposed to be. The mundaneness, and again, I mean, that's even an outlook, but this idea that, all right, well, you got to work 5 days a week. Come home, you have the weekends off, but you don't really have the weekends off because Sunday you're planning for the next week, and so really you get like 1 day off in the evening of Friday if you're not working too late. That to me just sounded stupid. Like, I want to live a life that's passion, that's full of emotion, that's full of freedom. Yes, it requires sacrifices, but I don't believe you have to sacrifice life in the process of doing it. That is I'm going to get off my soapbox now. So again, the whole point of life is to have experience, is to have passion. If you want to live longer, set bigger goals. And it doesn't have to be goals of trying to achieve $1 million and do the thing. It's something like, you know what? I want to have pizza in Italy. I want to hike I can't remember what the trail is. There's a trail in Spain. It's like, I don't even remember the name, but it's this religious retreat. And I think it takes like a month to hike. Maybe you want to do that, right? But that's going to require you to be in a certain physical condition. And so as a result of that, it's going to mean you have to change your eating habits. You're going to have to work out. You're going to have to train more. All these things are what is going to pull you forward, change your habits so that you have the strength, the stamina, the passion, the emotional juice to move forward towards those goals. Take one, move towards it. That is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. This was really a whim. I read that this morning and I felt like this is what I needed to share. And as a result, that's why I'm here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know you could be listening to anything, but I hope in some way this has enriched your life and made you think differently, at the very least about your age, but also about the goals that you want to strive for. And that there's more to life than just the work and the day-to-day responsibilities that you have. But that's not living. Living is the emotions that make you feel alive: happiness, joy, gratitude, excitement, passion. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe. You can comment or ask a question. Do all the above by visiting my website at www.donnyraus.com. Again, www.donnyraus.com. If you would like to be notified when I drop the course in September, you can do so by emailing me through the website. Again, www.donnyraus.com. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. God bless. And remember this, you get one life. Live it. Thank you so much.